Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Performance Zone. It's David Martin here again with Pat Gross. We are here on our special, what started out as I think is a 5 or 6 week, which I think is probably going to end up being 7 or 8 or maybe 9 weeks. But well, put it this way, it's going to be until we get covered all the stuff that we wanted to cover in relation to this new concept we have called 5D thinking. But welcome back to the Performance Zone. Pat, David, here we are. We've been covering a lot of different stuff. Today, we're going to take a little bit of a turn, talk about out of the box thinking, or there's no box thinking. We've talked about what else? Focus.
Yeah, and you can't start building from the 10th story.
Can't start building on the 10th floor. And there's been so much. Focus was actually 2 weeks, but today it's kind of like, I want to start with this. It's like, if you have a business or you're selling something, but no one knows you have that thing to sell. And maybe it's a great thing, and maybe if everybody knew about it, they would all want it. But nobody knows about it because you never let them know. Then that's shame on you, right? So it's kind of like the same thing. I, for one, and I will admit this, I don't know, Pat, you can see if you want to do this or not. When it comes to the young people, there's been a lot of jokes. There's always, you got the boomers, the Gen Xers, and of course the millennials seem to have been the butt of the jokes for a long, probably the last 5 or 6 years that I can recall. And I would be one of those. I look, oh, these young kids, they don't know, blah, 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 blah. And then it was brought to my attention by somebody else who may be sitting across on the other side of the screen from me, that some of these kids, it's often like the sale. If I don't ever let them know that I've got something for sale, then they're not going to want to buy it because they don't know about it. Likewise, along that line of thinking, if I never let them know about opportunities, if I never let them know there are things they can do, if I never reach out to and instruct them or guide them or mentor them or reach out and let them know, because there are a lot of young people who are absolutely amazing. And guess what, folks? It's up to us to let them know. So have you ever, I'm going to turn it over to Pat because she's got the story of how this all came about. And I remember that day she told me, it was like, oh, wow, that's shame on me, not shame on them. So Pat, tell them how you kind of brought us up to this little line of thinking here.
Yeah, sure. Because I work it where my client base is a lot in the community sector. I always hear about the community organizations have boards or committees that manage them, and constantly we're getting this complaint that the committee members, the board members are all older volunteers, nobody's coming through, there's no young people, they've tried advertising, they've tried promoting, they've tried this, they've tried that, they've tried the other, and there's just no interest. Anyway, I was talking to a millennial, 25 to 35, he was in that bracket one day. And I sort of mentioned this, and he said, you know what? He said, this is absolute rubbish. He says, nobody has actually ever asked us.
Right.
And we sort of started thinking, well, actually, it's absolutely right. Wherever you go on, however you promote your goods, your services, what you do, social media, it's always about, you're taught to identify your market. You're taught to niche. You're taught, to think about where they hang out and all the rest of it. Now, this is interesting because coming from the community development space, the number one thing you do is ask what they want. Ask what the problem is. Ask. I'd been doing that, but I never actually married the two up.
No, and part of that is it's sometimes when we, and again, I will admit this, guys, so it's not just certain people that do it. We all do it. I prejudged. I had a preconceived notion. I had a pre-frame based on, and I had probably done it to myself, just all those darn kids, they don't know how to work. They don't know this. And, darn millennials and those young kids. And once in a while I would see a young kid and I go, well, he's the exception, not the rule. And I again, these are the rules that I would have dealing in other markets and with other people. I would not do I wouldn't prejudge. Don't prejudge. Just don't go in. Don't think about that. And that's what I can that's what people do. They kind of say, I'm not going to ask him because he probably is this because of his age.
Well, interestingly enough, when we were having this conversation, it was towards the end of last year. It was, like COVID, there were still restrictions, stay at home, all the rest of it. And he said, we have missed the perfect opportunity over 2 years. He said there are a lot of young people stuck at home looking for something to do, to help out, to volunteer, and nobody's ever asked them.
Yep.
Now, there's a little bit of our.
When you were saying that about like people say, oh, they market, they ask, they reach out. I'm like, do they really though? Or do they?
Exactly.
No, I mean, they don't. Because if there's so many of these young people out there that they concur, they say, no one asks us. No one reaches out to us. And they look for places and they look for these, oh gosh, like there's different clubs over here. I know that young people go out and they join and because they want to do things. I forget what they're called. You'd probably recognize the name, but I mean, there's certain groups and I realized, you know what? And they're all under 30, right? They're all these groups. You can't be, once you're 30, you have to move on to the next group, right? But yeah, I mean, so who's out there and in what context? I mean, I know you're talking about it from a community standpoint. Nobody asked them to help. But what about from a business standpoint? Has anyone asked them to learn? What do they want to learn? Because not everybody wants to go to dental school or become an accountant or an engineer or a computer programmer, or some people say, I want to learn business, or I want to learn to a trade, or I want to learn, the trades are awesome because they have that whole process set up of mentorship and apprenticeship.
Yeah. And we've now got this whole concept of the Great Resignation. This is the word, the terminology. Me and you, we were talking about this 18 months ago, right. What's coming after COVID, and people are going to be looking at things differently, or everything, etc. But here again, they're sort of saying, oh, we're looking for, we're going to have the new brand of entrepreneurs, the Great Resignation, people setting up their own businesses, people looking for other kinds of jobs and opportunities. But again, we're missing an opportunity. Asking them exactly what they want to do with their lives.
Yep.
And it's not just the younger people, it's the older people as well. We all come to moments in our lives when we need change. And what we need is somebody to ask us. And when we then allow ourselves to open up, then the journey begins. But otherwise, you end up with frustration and you end up with disappointment. And that's on both sides.
That it is. I remember having a conversation with you, gosh, must have been about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. And it was about educating, using online learning, what is really online learning. And we were talking about people, this whole concept of going back, we're not going back, right? We talked about that. And so to get out there and to ask people what they really want, are they prepared? What are they willing to do to prepare? Continually asking them with questions to find out what needs fit the market. But if the question's not asked, then no answer or response is given.
You're making assumptions, and and one person or organization makes an assumption, and everybody else jumps on that assumption. And that could be here, but the real answer's over here. But can I tell you again? It might be that people, your businesses or whoever, are maybe too frightened to ask, or never thought to ask the question. And what kind of questions you ask, and why do we ask questions? Now, interesting enough, I was just recently in a sort of community planning, and I'm sorry, but I'm good at bringing business concepts into the community space. What I'm going to do today is to bring community concepts into the business space. Right?
Okay.
Okay.
I know I have access to the recording, but I'm going to take notes now.
It's okay, because there's magic in the asking. There's a lot of magic in asking. Now, I've been in situations where we've been working on behalf of community training organizations, community development organizations who have had difficulties, connecting with their communities. And their community is not just people, it's businesses as well.
Right.
What are the needs out there, et cetera, et cetera. Now, interesting thing is, you can go out there, you go into the community, you can do the online stuff. It's better if you've got your clipboard, not better, just as well as part of the toolkit. You've got a clipboard, you've got your questions, go out and ask the questions face to face. Or, during COVID, I've been doing them online in focus groups, and it's had the same effect because it gives people, the questions give people the chance to actually tell you what they're thinking. But the magic isn't just about, allowing people to tell you what they're thinking and by asking the right questions. The magic is that there's a connection starting to happen. The magic connection between the organization, even if it's a third party like us doing the facilitation,
right,
and the end user. And we've had some brilliant examples. We've had them where the organizations, there's been some difficulties in the past, or they might not even know they exist or what they do. And we've had that as well. I've had different players come to meetings and actually tell people what they do, because some people in organizations are too frightened to ask the competition, for example. All those, breaking down those barriers. Once you start asking, you realize that there is a connection, and the connection isn't just horizontal. It's actually thinking there's a timeline connection as well. So in the past, if there's been some issues in the past, and they might think, oh, these people, we don't want to know them anymore. So you might be a business that's had an issue. But by going back and asking the customer base where they're at, right now, they're actually going to go, actually, what's happening here? I want to find out more about what this business is doing. Now, I mentioned it recently, but I'll put it back in the community context because this was a fantastic learning lesson for us. We were working in a sort of social housing area. We were doing some surveying. We wanted to get a community organization re-engaged with the community. Now, the very week that we started doing the work with them, only up the street, there had been a siege with police involved and weapons. And this particular organization had also had a recent history where many of the users were from one faction of the community, and I'm going to use the word faction, right?
Fair enough.
And therefore, they're frightened away the main bulk of the community. Now, you just translate this to business as well. You focus here, but where's the rest of your customer base by focusing here? So, and that part of the customer base is no longer interested because they feel as though you don't care. And this is a similar situation. So we had a challenge of a community that had become disheartened, disinterested, disaffected, and with a very recent raw case of, conflict.
Right.
So it was amazing because what we did was, we did it during the daytime, but we did go knocking on doors. We had the questions, we had the whatever. We've had focus groups, so we invited people together. Food was involved. We had a barbecue. My assistant put together a really, really amusing flyer, and we did letterbox drops. Now, that's because in those kind of communities, and again, I'm using letterbox drops, you can use whatever way that your business community, or I'm using community here, how they want to find information, how they want to be informed. Now, we use letterbox drops because in this part of town, they very much rely on coupons and discounts, right, catalogs for the local shopping. Right. Therefore, they don't just throw away junk mail. They actually read it because they need it. Okay. So that's how we do it. So again, thinking about your client base that you want to reach and and how they want to receive the information. So we went down, we went and did the asking. We sort of put out the flyers. We had the interviews with people, and the outcome was really, really good. We got a lot of response despite this sort of problem happening. And it turned out that There were people in the community who were frightened to leave their houses, but there were also people who remembered that community organization from when their kids were young.
Right.
So there was an emotional attachment to that place, even though it was going through a bad time. There was a lot of underlying long-term support. Your customers have got long memories. The community, in this case, the community had a long memory.
Right.
So if you have got a customer base that's had a positive experience in the past, now not just negative, but there's something like that.
Sure.
They go back and ask their advice. Ask them, because they're your raving fans, basically. They were going to come forward and they're going to help you out of the situation.
It's and there's a big fear that people make these, well, they don't want to hear from me, or they don't want to do that. And that's the thing. I mean, if you're talking about drop boxes and coupons in a small community, and some of you were saying, you might be thinking out there, well, yeah, well, that's for a community, and she said she was going to connect it with business. Guys, okay, it's very simple. Send out a poll, send out a questionnaire format, an email format to your customers. They haven't heard from you in a while. You can send out that you can do that even in text nowadays with some of the services. You can email it. You can do it through, I'm seeing different things they're doing on Instagram now, where you can do a poll, yes or no. You can do it on Facebook. You can, because people, yes, the kids say that all the old people are on Facebook, and I guess I'm one of those old people because I'm on Facebook. But the point is, there are communities everywhere. If you're in business, you could have your own community. You don't have a community, go out and find a community. There are groups on, I think I made the joke a few weeks ago about, you can go on to Facebook and find a group for Volkswagen Beetles from the 1974 style that are fluorescent green, right? And you can don't talk about blue or orange or yellow. They only want to talk about fluorescent green. So those groups are out there. You can find it. The question is, you have to look, but then you have to ask. And if you don't, what did the guy say to me years ago? If you want to GET, you must ASK. So in other words, if you don't get it, and again, it could be in the community space. It could be in the corporate space. It could be in the entrepreneurial space. It could be in the online marketing, the network marketing, insurance, real estate, labs. I have a woman that I know that runs one of the testing labs here. They do all the testing for COVID and different things here and around. It's a relatively significant lab. They do all of New Mexico and maybe parts of Southern Colorado and Eastern Arizona. And it could be in that kind of thing. You could be doing sales for them, or maybe not. It could be just, if you're in a corporation and you have a team, ask your team, what do they want? Ask your team how they're doing. Put these things out there. And again, it can be one-on-one, it could be paper format, online format, all this stuff that take it and run with it. Take it and run with it. But the most important thing from my standpoint is remember to ask. Because if you don't ask, you don't get the answer you're looking for.
Yeah. Now, I would just want to change the direction a little bit, because what's just occurred to me, I mean, we can come back. There's this beauty about these conversations. Sure. Is it's spontaneous and we can move around. So, listeners, please put up with us, but we do actually, we are actually covering a lot of ground.
Right.
And and look, one of the things I'm finding at the moment, David, there's a lot of online networking groups. Okay. And the point of some of these networking groups is you're supposed to do one-on-one conversations afterwards. All right.
Right.
And what I'm finding is that I'm connecting with people, and though the rules in the actual networking meetings is you don't sell to each other, you just tell your business is what you do, blah blah blah, and then you connect and think, is one, what space do we work in? Do we work in a similar space? How can we work together? That's the great sort of intentions. But what really happens is you end up in a one-to-one with somebody, and all they want to do is sell their product, right? Now, and sometimes they're very
I know the meetings.
They're very, very superficial, but what they're not doing is really asking what is, well, first of all, what's the intention? Are we working together or not? I'm asking what they, how we can connect. But even if they were trying to sell me something, don't sell me your health products. I just, ask me first what my, feelings and thoughts and whatever that is, because I feel very awkward. And I'm thinking afterwards, I'm quite resentful because, that's not what my intention of developing a network is all about. And that that takes me to somebody who was doing actually an education piece in a group about last Christmas, Christmas just gone, and he was talking about being in a network meeting or going to New York, and he had one of those network meetings, and he's saying, what do you do? And the guy said to him, what do you do for me? And he started telling him what he did, and the guy started getting a little bit about this. So he repeated again what he did, and he said, you're not listening to me. I'm saying to you, what do you do for me? and then he realized that, that's what he was doing was just spiel, but he wasn't actually thinking about answering the question, what does he do that's going to be a benefit for him? And that was really, really sort of an eye-opener again, asking the right questions and answering the right, answering those questions. Everybody's so blinkered, whether you're going to be asking the questions or whether you're going to be answering questions.
Right.
And you're answering the questions you think people are asking.
that you're right. They're answering a question. They're already thinking of their response without listening to the question.
Yeah.
They're not listening. And it's so that particular concept of, and here's the thing too, I find when I used to participate in those networking meetings, there were times that some people think if I'm talking to you, if I give you a lead, then you should, at some point, you're going to give me a lead. And they don't realize, and my experience is, if I give you a lead, you may give Monty, we'll use for a great name, just happened to pop into my head. We'll give Monty a lead. Monty might give Malcolm a lead. And then Malcolm might talk to Peter, and Peter's going to talk to Mary, and Mary's going to say, hey, David, I have somebody. People expect this. Well, I give to you, you give to me. And sometimes that's not how it works. Sometimes you have to give and be ready to serve and be willing to say, what I do doesn't, instead of me just trying to close you, right? And that's people out closing the business. I listened to this really interesting part of it because everybody wants to close their business, get their money. And this guy was like, when you have the right product, you make the right presentation, and you're talking to the right person, you don't really have to close them. They'll close themselves if it's a good fit. And it's very easy. It shouldn't be stressful at all. And I remember that we as entrepreneurs or business owners or salespeople or networkers, we have to be willing to say, what I have isn't what's going to work for you, if we're listening.
Yeah.
And I remember years ago, this athlete got mad at me when I was coaching because I said, I've taken you as far as I can go. You need to go. For me to really be of service to you, I have to suggest that you go work with somebody that's going to be more suited to you. I got you from A to B, A to B to C. He's the guy that's going to get you through D, E, and F. I can't get you through D, E, and F. Now, I might be able to get this guy through D, E, and F because it's a different dynamic. He's older, he's a different weight division, whatever it was. But I think the challenge is, as some people think that they have to be the guy or the girl or the woman, right? It has to be them. And that's not always, if we're truly coming from a place of service to make sure you get the best, you're not, it doesn't behoove you for me to try and sell you a package that, number one, you may already have, you may have in a different format from a different person. But that's not what you need right now. Maybe you need to get this over here. So if you're watching this, take a step back. Mindset is such a crucial component in everything we're talking about here, and how you view the person you're talking to. That will direct whether you ask them the questions properly. And when you ask, are you asking the right questions? All that stuff comes up to mind as you're saying all these things about, are they listening? Right? Because if you are going to be, part of asking a question is listen. That's what I'm hearing.
Well, Well,
Sorry,
picking up on
I'll
what
go
you were
off on a
saying,
rant.
no, it's all right. Because picking up on what you were saying about pay it forward, you're right. Because people in these networking meetings and people end up talking to me, and because I'm not directly business to business sort of thing, I can't actually come up and give you a clear referral contact. What I can do, and again, I'm listening to what they're asking, is to find a whole new sector for them. Because I know when I talk about the non-profit sector, etc., people think non-profit just means charities, and it doesn't. It's just the way the business is structured. It's structured that it doesn't give profits out to directors. But it still has a board or committee, and it's probably more better structure than, say, small business owners. And some of these people, organizations, can be multi-million-dollar businesses. So we've got to get over that, first of all. People think, listen,
a true
non-profit.
understanding, right? They have to get a true understanding of what this is.
So when I say to them, okay, so they're looking forward to deal with it. Like, for instance, you might have somebody who works in that health and food, diet. And they're looking for certain they're looking for people, actually, people who've got dietary issues and blah, blah, blah. And when they ask the question, and I say to them, actually, you do realize, how to get to your market, where these people hang out, who the intermediaries are. And then I could give them a whole new market. So I can tell them that there are, community organizations that actually have those people coming to them. And they do actually offer training or room hire on things like that. So I can give them these kind of things, but they can't give me anything in return, because I'm not looking for a food diet or anything like that.
Right.
So as you say, the best thing they can do is pay it forward, so that when somebody else comes to them, as you say, they can give the advice and pay it forward. And at the same time, I haven't really lost out, because as the way things work, I will get that thank you from somewhere else.
Right. I just wish that's if people would really grasp onto that. It's not, it's rarely, in my experience, is it direct. If I give you, you give me. And sometimes it is. Sometimes it's very plain like that. It depends on the people. But when you go in with that attitude of being able to, connect, and it might be 6 months down the road. It might not be immediate. And that's where I think people need to learn to nurture and listen and continue. You know what I mean? They have to stay with it. Because also, again, we've talked about the microwave mentality, about how people want things now. I just opened my business. Why am I not rich? All right. Because it's like, well, there's this thing called work that you have to do and relationships that you have to create. But keep in mind, folks, I guess I kind of want to bring it back full circle here to stay on the whole thing, is like, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to reach out to the people, to the market, to the groups. If you want to work with young people, great. Don't automatically assume young people are lazy. They're not.
How do you, this is again coming back full circle, and again my experience back in the UK, I was sort of like the energy we took behind a market leader and what we were doing, and one of the things we always did was ask questions. And I'm thinking that in the terms of, I'm just remembering somebody who was saying a few days ago, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in the conversation, that's saying we don't need to consult because we represent the community. This was a small group. And we don't need to go out there and do a consultation exercise and find out what people want, because we're already representing them. And that's where they were missing the whole point of that connection and stuff like that. I've just forgotten what I was going to say. I've just lost the track there. But it is important. This, I've just remembered what it was, is that even in business, we need to be measuring. And part of that measurement isn't, how many Facebook connections we've got, results to a promotion, blah, 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 blah. It's also asking the questions of our prospective client base as to how it went, what do they want, all those questions. So what we used to do was we used to do professional development programs, and we were such that because it was a university department and we had terms, so four quarters in a year, in those breaks, we would be busy. We would be putting all together the promotion for the next 3 months.
Right.
And I used to say that
the kids had breaks, you guys didn't.
No, we didn't. For every break, for every course we did, we'd promote it in 4 places, knowing very well we'd end up doing it in 8. Such was the waiting list. The really subscription, we were just, we could fill what we were doing. We had conferences that went international, everything. What was our secret? One of the things we did, apart from food, that's brilliant, we've always got to have food in there, was we actually, if it was a course, we would send out, and when people registered, a pre-course questionnaire, asking them what they wanted out of that delivery. So each course that we did, or each day workshop, will be slightly different because we've mapped it to what they said they wanted. Not presuming that everybody, the one size fits all.
Right.
But we were able to customize. And then at the end of everything, we would do the evaluation form. And we would actually afterwards, dissect that evaluation form, collate it, and then look at the results. And sometimes I would cry. No, I wouldn't cry, but I'd be going, this, you can get some negative stuff because all it takes is, it's just not necessarily what you've done. It could be something that happened on the way there, or something that's, just one thing could set the whole thing off. And I used to, funny enough, I used to the converse of that, and I used to say, nothing would be a success unless there was a disaster first. So if something went wrong before the event, we knew it was going to work well. Otherwise, you'd find it worked every time. I can tell you a few disasters that happened before, and the event went perfectly. But that's sort of like eventing and you're releasing and all the rest of it. And then you just relax when it happens. But it was, a
lot of truth in that.
But we always ask them, we asked them how it went, etc. Then we'd have that section about, well, what else do you want? And sometimes we'd give them, we'd give them the tick box of some ideas, and then we'd give them that space. Always give them space to give you the additional stuff, because again, you can't assume that what they want is whatever's you've written on these tick boxes. There might be some brilliant new ideas just waiting for somebody to ask the question, what do you want?
And right, ask people what they want and then give it to them. I mean, that's pretty much, it's interesting you say that, because I mean, even from a tech standpoint, right? I mean, I've seen people from an online marketing standpoint do exactly what you're talking about, but apply it online. Ask people what they want, even though their program is not going to really change, because the way their program is designed in this particular instance, it's applicable to all these different markets, right? But the marketing can't be the same. So this gentleman went out and he tested, asked the questions, did the market research, got the information, looked at it and said, okay, I need to have 3 different pitches. The funnel's the same. The program that he's marketing was the same, but he made one landing page for each one. This landing page here had a slightly different presentation. And then the people that wanted his program from there, so they went from here to this part. This one went to this part. This one went to, each one was just a slightly different presentation.
Yeah.
But there is work involved, right? That's another one too. That I guess that I don't want to pick on people, on certain people. I guess I'm going to pick on some people, and that's the lazy people, the people that want to do this quickly, right? You got to put some, yes, can things happen faster now than ever before? Absolutely. You still got to do the work. You still got to take, map out your plans, put out your strategy, build your business plans. And then once you get to know what to do, yeah, you ask the questions, but it's easier now than ever before, I think. It's like, now we can get information so fast online, right? And I encourage all of you out there that might be watching this.
Can I ask a question? Is
Do
it
your
easier
research.
to do
Yes,
it?
go ahead.
Is it easier to do it, or is it easier to forget to do it?
I guess I'm going to go Jim Rohn on you and say, if it's easy to do, it's easy not to do. I think from a information gathering standpoint, it's much easier to do. But I think it's kind of like, I was telling my daughter the other day, money only makes you more of what you are.
Yeah.
If you're a really nice person and a kind person and you get a lot, you win the lottery, you're just going to be a really nice person with a lot of money. If you're a jerk, right, and you win the lottery, now you're going to be a jerk with a lot of money. It's just going to make you more of what you are. And I think sometimes technology kind of works in the same way. If you're lazy, technology is going to make you lazier because you don't have to do as much to maintain the status quo. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, or if you're really efficient and productive and aggressive and you got a lot of things you want to do, you can get more done. I just looked at this whole list of things today. Tickled pink that this guy put together a list and shared it. He was like, this is my list of things, tools that can help you. And it's absolutely, he's another NLP guy that we exchange information sometimes. And he just talk about doing something. Hey, what's he going to get directly from me for that? I don't know. I mean, there are things that he does that I don't like to do, right? Like we have a mutual friend that I told him, if people want, they said, David, would you do an NLP training for us? And I said, no. They go, what do you mean? We want to do that? I said, no, I don't want to do that. I have no desire in the world to do an NLP training. However, this gentleman over here loves to do that. And he's got a course coming up. My suggestion is please come, if that's what you want, and he's good at it. So, why not? And I lost my place now where I was going with that. But anyway, it was, no, it's just a matter of when you have these ideas and you ask the questions, technology, when you utilize the technology, it's going to make you more, if you want to get all this stuff done, it can help you. There's technology out there. I use the thing called you know what the Pomodoro means? It's Italian for tomato.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And there's a kid, an Italian kid. The Pomodoro method is to take a kitchen timer and time yourself as you're doing tasks, right? And he was a college student and he wasn't getting a lot done. So he took his mother's timer and it looked like a tomato. And he would time himself for 25 minutes, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes, 5 minutes off. And then every 2 hours, he'd take a 15-minute break. That became known as the Pomodoro method, right? There's those kind of tools. They're free online. And I use that to help me stay when I'm doing work that can really fry my brain, like I'm scripting or I'm recording. Not so much recording, I don't want to be interrupted, but recording or working on the funnels or doing things that I have to get done in a certain period of time, it keeps me on track. There's Asana. Chris and I are doing a project together right now. And he said, hey, he just puts it in there. Can you take a look at this? If you're collaborating with people, there are tools. There's so many different things, Microsoft Teams. You can do this, but, get out there, be bold. I guess for me, this is about playing bigger, right? Don't play small. I've done some cool things, but I've also played small a lot too. And it's like, now we're at the stage where I want to play big. And I encourage you guys out there watching this. Pat's brought some brilliant commentary to the concept of how to you're going to find more out about people by asking questions, and they will tell you exactly what they want, either to participate in your program, to join your team, to purchase from you, whatever it may be. You can apply these principles in a variety of ways in your business, in your community, or whatever it is you're doing. All right. It's not a one size fits all, but you know what? There is some stretch fabric in here in what we're talking about. You want to look at it that way. So awesome. Well, listen, we are coming up to the bottom. Anything else you want to close with tonight, Pat? I mean, and we can continue on this too. So just what are your closing words for tonight?
No, I would say that the magic is in the asking. The magic is in the asking. The magic is in the responses. The magic is in the connection. And the magic is in see what happens when you ask. But you have got to ask the right questions as well. But I mean, yes.
Yeah. And
magic is in the asking.
And as they're asking questions, I mean, I've got a list. You'd reach out to me. I've got some questions that I work with people. I give them away. Here, use these questions. But here's the thing, guys, you might not be great at this to get started, but get started and keep doing it, because then you'll get better. The only way to get better is to get started.
And I
right?
love doing focus. I love doing focus groups, bringing people together, setting out questions, and then in the mid, just lighting the touch paper, and you can see the interaction because they find out what each other's doing, and they generate new ideas, they
Oh,
generate new relationships, and you get a lot of information from this. And right now, as I leave this call, I'm putting together a report from a meeting that is there's me here, and there's a room with about 4 or 5 people at the other side the other day, and now I'm busy scribing I was, but now I've got, the magic now is I've got something for them, and I can solve a problem they had. But next week's topic, dare I say, you ready for this? This is one you're really going to enjoy, is defining the word entrepreneur.
oh,
As we don't see it the same way as a lot of people.
well, we certainly see it different than some people that also use the word, but I won't get into their name, even though, anyway. But, and you gave me a great idea just a few seconds ago. I'll share it with you next time we speak. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks for joining in. Thanks for watching us here in this special edition of the Performance Zone on 5D thinking, which is expanding beyond what's already accepted as norm. And remember, as you go on, everything you do, put everything you have into everything you do, because the best is yet to come. We'll see you next time.